In a speech that reverberated through the Rocky Mountain peaks hosting the G7 summit, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney yesterday issued his most forceful and direct challenge to US President Donald Trump, warning that Canada will not be intimidated by American tariffs and is actively preparing for a future with diminished reliance on its traditional ally. Speaking to fellow world leaders at his global debut as Prime Minister, Carney combined a stark message of defiance with a strategic blueprint for Canadian resilience, signaling a potential paradigm shift in North American relations. He declared that the era of American predominance is over and that Canada is charting a new, more independent course on the world stage, a move he framed as both a necessity and an opportunity. For decades, Canada has prospered under a system of open global trade anchored by the United States, Carney stated, his tone firm and unyielding. But that system is fracturing. We are masters in our own home, and while we will always seek partnership, we will not be a junior partner. We must now build a Canada that can give itself far more than any foreign government can ever take away. The speech, delivered in the heart of Alberta, was a thinly veiled rebuke of President Trump's America First agenda, which has seen Washington impose punitive tariffs and repeatedly question the value of long-standing alliances. Carney directly addressed the economic conflict initiated by Trump. Donald Trump has put unjustified tariffs on what we build, on what we sell, on how we earn a living. He's attacking Canadian workers, families, and businesses, Carney said, referencing a theme he has honed since his leadership campaign. We can't let him succeed, and we won't. To those who seek to weaken our economy through division and intimidation, let me be clear. Canadians are always ready when someone else drops the gloves. In trade, as in hockey, Canada will win. This defiant rhetoric was a direct response to months of escalating pressure from Washington, including Trump's public musings about Canada becoming the 51st US state. Carney, who has previously countered that Canada is not for sale, used the G7 platform to internationalize his message of sovereignty. Analysts noted his assertion that the United States is beginning to monetize its hegemony was a particularly sharp critique, suggesting Washington is now charging allies for market access and security guarantees that were once pillars of the post-war order. Beyond the strong words, however, the Prime Minister laid out the most detailed vision yet of a Canada actively insulating itself from American volatility. The core of his strategy is a multi-pronged effort to reduce the country's profound economic and strategic dependence on the United States. Nostalgia isn't a strategy, Carney warned, signaling a decisive break from past assumptions about the Canada-US relationship. Our world has fundamentally changed. We will chart a new path forward because this is Canada and we decide what happens here. He announced a massive national project to build, baby, build, outlining plans for new trade and energy corridors that would connect Canadian resources to global markets through its Atlantic and Pacific ports, bypassing American infrastructure. This includes creating new trading relationships with reliable partners in Europe and the Indo-Pacific, a clear move to diversify away from the US, which currently accounts for roughly 75% of Canadian exports. Perhaps the most concrete and startling element of this strategic pivot is in the realm of defense and security. Carney confirmed that Canada would not only meet the NATO spending target of 2% of GDP, but would fundamentally rethink its procurement strategy, which has historically been deeply integrated with the US defense industrial base. He detailed plans to establish Borealis, the Bureau of Research, Engineering, and Advanced Leadership in Science, a new government agency designed to foster domestic innovation in frontier technologies like artificial intelligence and quantum computing for security applications. Furthermore, Carney signaled a clear intent to diversify defense spending away from an over-reliance on American suppliers. Recent moves, such as purchasing a new radar system from Australia and considering submarine bids from South Korean and European firms, were presented not as isolated decisions, but as the leading edge of a deliberate long-term strategy. The era when Canada buys heavily from the United States is likely over, commented one senior official on Background. Washington should not take for granted its potential role in Canada's defence future. Despite the confrontational posture, Carney's approach is two-pronged. Even as he delivered his bold public speech, his office confirmed he held a one-on-one meeting with President Trump on the sidelines of the summit. In a surprising development that adds a layer of complexity to the dynamic, the two leaders emerged with an agreement to pursue negotiations toward a deal within the coming 30 days to resolve the immediate trade pressures. This dual strategy, public defiance coupled with private negotiation, is seen by analysts as classic Carney. The former central banker is betting that he can rally Canadians around a patriotic vision of self-reliance, thereby strengthening his hand to extract concessions from an American administration that, for all its bluster, still relies heavily on integrated supply chains in sectors like auto manufacturing and critical minerals. The reaction from other G7 leaders has been one of cautious observation. For nations in Europe and Asia also grappling with Trump's transactional approach, Carney's speech was a bold articulation of a shared dilemma. His call for middle powers to compete for their interests, knowing that if they're not at the table, they're on the menu, resonated with many in the room. For now, the Kananaskis summit will be remembered as the moment Mark Carney formally declared an end to Canada's quiet complacency. He has thrown down a gauntlet, warning Donald Trump that Canada will not bend to pressure while simultaneously launching a national project of strategic realignment. The next 30 days of trade negotiations will be a critical test of this high-stakes gambit, but the long-term message is unmistakable. Canada is preparing for a world where it must stand on its own. Sources: